The following program may contain strong language and mature content. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. I am Tasha Champion, your host of She Is Shenomenal, and I am glad to have you guys all back. As you can see, I have an in-person guest today, which I'm really excited to chat with. We have a great conversation coming up. We're going to be talking about being physically functioning, but mentally drained. And I know just by saying the title, you guys all know what that means as an adult, as parents, as entrepreneurs, as workers. We keep going and going and going and going and going, and we're just functioning, but mentally we have just completely checked out sometimes. So before we get into that, I always have to remind you guys of your mammograms. So, as you know, I'm a breast cancer survivor, so I'm a huge advocate for making sure you stay on top of your health. And one of the ways to do that for women, and let me make sure men understand, if there's a history of breast cancer in your family, you do need to talk to your doctor about getting a mammogram for yourself. It's done a little bit differently, it's ultrasound, but you still need to do that. As a guest, if you have not done it, I'm going to push you to do it too. But make sure you guys are getting your mammograms. I am actually running a challenge. If you have had your mammogram from January of 2020 all the way up to July 1st of this year, you are eligible to register for the mammogram challenge. The winner will be announced at our second annual Shenomenal Women's Brunch. You win a huge gift prize box. There's so much that you are given just because you are a yes to smash your boobs. The smash can save your life. And be sure you call a friend. I call it being breast friends, to make sure that you guys are getting your mammograms. That one call you make to your friend, your family member, can definitely save your life. So get your mammograms. And of course, I have to make sure that I mention the second annual Shenomenal Women's Brunch. I am so excited. I can't believe it's been almost a year since the first one. The second one is right around the corner, and it is a do not miss. I have incredible speakers, like fire speakers. You will be meeting them soon, but you want to be at the brunch to hear what they have to say, because they are going to awaken your Shenomenal and Phenomenal life, because I do welcome our men to come and join us in a celebration of women. So make sure, Darlene, I see you will be there. Thank you so much. I can't wait to have you guys all in that space. So July 9th, 2022 at the Hilton Garden Inn, 10543 Sierra Avenue Fontana, California, 92337. From 11 to 4, we are going to network. We're going to empower you. We are going to just really awaken and embrace that phenomenal glow that we all carry. So I can't wait for you guys to be a part of that. Get your tickets today. It absolutely will sell out. So don't forget. All right. So I am not doing a Shenomenal spotlight this week. And the reason why is because we have had another tragedy yesterday. We had another school shooting. It's so difficult to say another. That part is so hard to say another school shooting. And this one, and guys, please understand, it doesn't matter whether it's middle school, high school, college. But when I say our babies, you're talking about second, third, and fourth graders. And what's so unfortunate is in the country we live in America, there are just not enough gun laws. And now understand, Tasha Champion, I am not a political person. I don't get into a lot of political talks, but my personal opinion is there's so much money in guns and in the NRA and the people that run the country that have a part of the NRA. So why would they really give us stricter gun control laws? And because of that, people are just shooting things up, you know? And we already had the shooting, just a week ago in Brooklyn, the racism that just continues to play out. Being a mother of, being a Black woman that has Black children, especially 3 sons, it's a very scary feeling sometimes. And they are, you know, pretty much adults and getting ready to go out into the world. And I almost just want to keep them locked in the house with me where I know that they're safe. But that's not essentially a way of life. It's not a way of living. They get to enjoy life. And the only thing I can do is keep my children covered in prayer, and for them to remember to check in with their own spirit. If something doesn't feel right, it ain't right, walk away, get up and go, whatever you have to do. But as a mom, to all the moms out there and fathers, to all parents, to even all aunties and teachers, those that are just always in contact with our kids, love and prayers to you, love and prayers to the families that were affected yesterday. I mean, you got to think it's the end of the year. So imagine how many of these parents had, oh, look at these babies. Imagine how many of these parents had summer vacations planned for these children. And now instead of planning their vacations, they are planning funerals. They are planning life without them. So just a lot of love to all of these families. A lot of love to the victims in Buffalo. I think I said Brooklyn, my apologies, in Buffalo, New York. And let's just keep each other covered and encouraged. And all of this that's going on, it makes you understand that the little arguments and pettiness that you have going on is not that serious. Apologize to people, love on people, forgive people, and let's just really embrace, because we never know how much time we have. So absolutely, that's that.
And can I just say, when does this not become the norm? Like you mentioned, to say another, there's an indication that this is repetitious behavior.
Yes.
And when does this not become the norm? You also said you want to keep your children home where they're safe. Those parents send their children to school
where they should be safe. That part.
And so it's
difficult.
It's hard.
It's difficult. And then there's this cycle. I saw it on Facebook, and I don't remember exactly, but it's like, you know, mass shooting, a lot of vocal talk, a lot of tears and prayers. Political parties do nothing. It starts to quiet down, and then we're back to mass shooting. This is just the cycle. Yes. It's the loop. It's almost just win. And it's unfortunate. It's so unfortunate. So again, prayers to all of those families in Buffalo as well as in Texas. Terribly sad.
Ties a lot into our subject today.
It does.
Being mental health.
Yes, we are talking about mental health today, physically functioning, but being mentally drained. And I am going to have Dr. Danyelle Beal on. She is a clinical psychologist and behavioral analysis. She is absolutely incredible. Oh, and she is one of my Shenomenal women, as is Shirrell. So I have my Shenomenal co-authors, everybody I know. I'm telling you guys, I know a lot of Shenomenal women, hence the name of the show.
Yes.
But when I invited you to be a guest on the show, this was a topic that you chose. Why was this important to you? What did this mean to you to talk about physically functioning but feeling mentally drained?
At the time that you asked me to be on the show, that was exactly the moment that I was in. You said, what do you want to discuss? It wasn't, I didn't even think about it. It spilled from my lips because that was the place that I was in right at that moment. I am physically functioning every single day, but my mental, I have to be mindful to check in, not necessarily with other people, but even with myself.
Yes.
And I don't do that because my work, my entrepreneur life, my businesses, my clients keep me functioning.
Right.
And so I put my mental health on the back burner because we all have people that we have to answer to. Right. People think being your own boss, they're like, oh, you don't have to answer anybody.
You answer to those clients.
You answer. Hello. So yeah, the phone keeps ringing. I keep answering. Before you know it, it's bedtime. And I wake up that morning realizing that I have not checked my mental health. Right. I've not given myself time. I haven't given myself time to breathe, grieve, rest. And people see me go on vacation all the time. It's literally because I have to run away from home in order to preserve my mental. And it shouldn't be that way. I should have a quiet place where I can sort of, I don't want to say crawl into, but that's kind of what I mean.
Yeah.
To, like having a war room, right? Having a prayer room. Same instance.
And I think too, when people see you being like this bubbly, energetic person, you're laughing, you're encouraging people, they expect you to be that 24/7.
Always be okay.
Always be okay. Always be on.
Yeah.
Always have your light shining. And sometimes we do have to understand that even those energetic people still need those quiet moments. We need that rest. We need to just reset. But a lot of times, like you said, especially as an entrepreneur, but also just even if you're a working parent, if whatever it is, when you have to just go, day to day, you have your schedule, you know exactly what you do, you have everything planned out, to-do list. But what's not on that to-do list is your check-ins with yourself. When are you going to rest? When are you going to turn the phone off? And I'm so glad that we will talk with Dr. Danyelle Beal, because we need to find out what are those things that we can do to function, but also make sure we're taking care of our mental health. Like I can't talk about how important that is. Like I'm a person every, I would say probably 3 months, I check into a hotel. I tell granted my kids are older, so don't feel like oh gosh, she's leaving her kids at home, call social services. They are old enough to be at home. But I check into a hotel where I can just completely disconnect. I can disconnect. I don't have anybody knocking on the door saying mom.
Or phones ringing.
Or the phone's ringing. Yes. I would say I don't have anybody saying cook me dinner, or I need to eat, but I don't cook that much anyway. So I don't have that. But when we talk about mental health, is there a side of guilt that you feel when you do want to give yourself a break?
I do. There is. The guilt comes from exactly what you said, always being on. People always having that expectation that your light is on, that you're always encouraging and motivating and inspiring and encouraging. And so when I take time for me, I've literally gotten response from clients like, is everything okay? They're thinking if she's taking 5 minutes for herself, she's got to be absolutely bananas. And I don't want to give that impression. Right. I feel guilty because I feel like I have so much of responsibility, as they say, to whom much is given, much is required.
Exactly.
I feel so blessed with what I've been given that I feel like the requirement is to constantly be on. Right. And I've had too many moments where it's been shaking ground where that hotel check-in is not even go online and check in. It's show up at the front desk like, listen, you got
credit card in hand.
broom
I gotta go.
closet.
Yes.
That's fine. It doesn't even need a bed. You can couch and water,
Right.
and I'm
Exactly.
good. And so I want to learn some tips and tricks from Danyelle, Dr. Beal, about how I can take space for myself. You called me many times before and said, "Do you ever just breathe?" Mm-hmm. And how scary is that? That I had to actually think about it. And the answer is no. I don't take that 20 seconds and just breathe in and breathe out. I don't.
Okay, so what she's talking about is I am really, really big on intentionally breathing. And I encourage my clients once an hour, just to take 3 deep, intentional breaths. Like really, really inhale, expanding your abdomen, inhaling through your nose, and then just closing your eyes and releasing it through the mouth. Just doing that 3 times, and then 3 times an hour. Like, I know you guys are like, that's every hour, but you're breathing anyway. So can you just pause for a second and intentionally breathe? It really will give you just kind of that reset. Or if you guys watch on Pyro Media, Kwame Speaks, he was talking about walking away from your workspace sometimes, just going out and getting some fresh air, maybe take a quick walk around the block. Just shifting the space that you're in will help you get that reset that you need in that moment, because we are so conditioned to just go. And while you're going, especially if you have small children, you're teaching them how not to take a break. Right. And a sad part about it is I feel like society puts this on us that, like, if you're not working hard, you're not going to reach your goals. Right. Or if you're not constantly going, you can't sleep, you can't do this. It's like, hold on. But what about just my mental health?
If your mental health is not good, what can you be to anyone?
Right.
It's taken me a little while to get to that place, and I think that recent events in my life have taken me away from the progress that I had made with learning how to take time for myself.
Right.
And so I have got to get back there, because you feel, you ever, if you're sitting at a stop sign and a train is coming, you can see that train coming.
Right.
And you have the ability, if you're in the way of that train, to move out of the way.
Right.
I'm in a space where I know I need to move out of the way because of what's going on and my commitment to my business and to my staff and to my clients.
Right.
And I've really curbed the commitment to myself. And I want to get back to that place. And I feel like the best way to do that is to speak about it.
Right.
Because
absolutely.
I know I'm not the only entrepreneur in this space. And I not only want to get back to that place for myself, but I also want to give a forum for other entrepreneurs to understand that they're not alone.
Right.
And feeling like the world is on their shoulders, and so they don't have an opportunity to then take time for themselves. That's critical.
Now, I want to respect wherever you are and what you want to feel. Are you comfortable talking about the events that just transpired in your life that totally shifted pretty much kind of your existence?
Yes.
So let's talk about that, because it's one thing to have the entrepreneurial life and the things that you're doing, and you need to take a break sometimes. But what happens when now there is something that almost feels debilitating? How do you, and again, we'll be talking to Danyelle about this, but how do you make strides to come back to a place that is now so forever changed?
Exactly. To answer that last question, my honest answer is I have no idea. And I'm okay.
Hold on, pause. We are going to applaud that, because we become so conditioned to say that we're okay. And that if somebody says, well, how are you doing? I'm good. And then we have this thing where we tell people, oh, you're so strong, be strong. Stop telling people that, because what you're saying is, because what happens is when you constantly tell someone to be strong, when they have a moment where they need to cry or break down, now they're feeling weak, and they're confusing emotion for feeling weak. So I really appreciate you saying, I don't know. I have no idea. So talk about what this is.
Absolutely. So My mom is my best friend. We grew up together. She had me at a very, very young age, and she has been my best friend forever. And she is my light and my hope and my strength and my greatest fan and my biggest supporter. Person I probably fought with the most too.
Of course.
She was everything. And we celebrated her 70th birthday on January 14th this year. And she wasn't feeling well. I kept saying, no, Mom, you really need to get tested for COVID. She went and got her test on the 20th of January. And by the 28th of January, she was in the hospital with COVID. On the 30th of January, they put her on the ventilator. And on the 13th of February, Super Bowl Sunday, I had to go and have the machines turned on. And how do you go from dancing the night away on the 14th of January and 29 days later, saying goodbye to your best friend, your rock, your everything? And I have not really taken time to heal from that. And will I ever is a good question. Probably a question I should ask myself. But I have to say that if it wasn't for this entrepreneurial spirit, for my businesses, for the people's lives I'm responsible for, my staff, my children, I don't think I would be in one piece, because it's been the fuel that's been driving me. However, does this really mean it's the distraction that I need to keep me from having to process this release? Yeah. And I think it's the latter. I think I've been hiding behind that. Right. I also feel like my mom is encouraging me. We've had so many conversations when she was here about being strong. And, I don't want you to mourn my loss. And so she's saying that you have to be strong. Sometimes that word gets on my nerves.
That's why I just said.
I don't want to be strong all the time. I want to fall out in the middle of the floor and kick my feet and hold my breath and shout.
Right. But understand that doesn't make you weak.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And that's why I was talking about the perception of, well, be strong, or you're so strong, you're so strong. Like, let's stop telling people that.
Yeah, because I'm not. I wasn't in that moment. My person is very strong, but this was a situation that you could not have prepared me for in advance. And being without her has been the void is it's a gaping hole in my heart. It's like the size of the Grand Canyon. Right. I mean, it's that deep. Okay. And I feel her with me. She comes to me in my dreams, and she keeps me going and motivated. It's that first month or two. Thank you so much. It's that first month or two that I was a whole mess. Yeah, I was a whole mess.
And then I'm glad that you brought this up and that you are comfortable sharing about this loss in your life, because, again, going back to America, we don't get that time to grieve or to mourn. And you know what, let me not say even grieve or mourn, but we don't get that time to process the loss that we have to deal with.
Absolutely.
So you're dealing with the loss. First of all, you're already dealing with being an entrepreneur and just wanting time to yourself sometimes. Right. Then you have this loss. So how does the mental health part of this skyrocket into what in the hell do I do and how?
It puts me in a place where I feel like I want to be angry with the world because COVID came and stole my mother. At the same time, it has been a silent killer in this country for the last 2.5, almost 3 years now. Right. So I can't be mad at that. what I have to do is find a space to breathe, understand how I feel, and most importantly, let those feelings be what they are.
Yes.
I keep trying to push them back inside of me and be like, no, you're not supposed to feel that way. Or no, you don't feel vulnerable today.
Right.
You don't feel like you want to stay in bed and cover your head and turn off the TV and lock your door and turn your cell phone off. You don't feel like that because you're strong. You're an entrepreneur. And you have people you have to answer to. So you don't really feel like you feel.
Right, exactly.
I'm convincing myself that I don't feel like I feel. And you've been such a source of inspiration when you call and say, you know what, take your time. You don't have to run back into this thing. If you need some time off, and my fear was, of course, oh my gosh, what if I lose my clients? They're not going to get their meals, they're not going to have their parties planned, etc. What will I do? And I have to realize that what's for me is for me.
It's for you.
And if I do lose them as a result of this, I've gained myself.
Exactly.
Now, saying that to you is really simple.
Okay. Doing it is a total different thing.
Shoot, I can play that back for myself.
Right.
It sounds good, but that's not what's happening.
Because when you're in the thick of it, like you said, it sounds good, but it's not quite what happens. And like I told you before, and I'll say this, I hope you guys catch this too, when she said, what's for you is for you.
Absolutely.
So if a client does find another chef or walks away or whatever, what that really means is that God has already prepared 2 and 3, 4 more people to come right on along in that space, because he's never going to let you go without.
And I'm smiling so hard because that's exactly what's happening.
That's what's because it's what's going to happen. Yes. And we get to a place where we have to understand that when God says rest, you rest. When your body says rest, like our bodies literally tell us what we need to do, and we don't always listen.
And if we don't, it will shut down.
It will shut down.
Yes.
It will shut down.
Body says, I'm running things around here.
Exactly. All right. So we are going to go to a break. We're going to continue this conversation of physically functioning while feeling mentally drained. And we're going to be back with clinical psychologist, Dr. Danyelle Beal, so that she can really give us some tips and what to do, how to manage our mental health while we're still managing life. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back, and again, just thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing such honesty. But I want to go ahead and bring in Dr. Danyelle Beal, clinical psychologist, because we do need to have someone that can really bring this together and help us understand what do we need to do to make sure that we are functioning in a healthy way with our mental health. So let's go ahead and bring in Dr. Danyelle. Hello, Dr. Danyelle Beal. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for being here and being in this space. It's so important to talk about. And I want to preface it by saying, in the Black culture, we have this stigma about, speaking about mental health and talking to therapists and getting counseling and things like that. So I'm glad that we're having this talk, especially as Black women who we are put on this platform of strength and that we have to be strong and nothing can break us and things like that. So Danyelle, I know you've been listening in as we were talking about some of the things we deal with in being in business. And then when something happens in life that shakes up what is already a delicate situation for our mental health, how do we begin to continue to function, but making sure that our mental health is still being supported and cared for? So we're going to go ahead and listen to you.
Thank you. So I want to kind of frame that point that you just made about specifically mental health in the Black community. I think I've been operating and serving as a clinician for 24 years now. And one of the things that I found is when I'm working with Black families, specifically Black women, if I don't disclose on a certain level, then it's hard to establish trust. Trust is so vital for, I think, Black women in particular. And talking about breaking that stigma. So me disclosing that I'm a survivor, that I have had to kind of overcome my own mental health challenges really creates an opportunity to then have very necessary discussions. And so this is one of my favorite things to talk about. I love being in this space because if we don't talk about it, then we're really perpetuating that stigma and we're not getting the help that is so desperately needed. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
The other thing I want to say is, Ms. Shirrell, that as you're talking about being an entrepreneur, I wanted to just kind of highlight that your first generation, it sounds like, right? Like this is your legacy, right? That you're trying to build. And so you guys hit the nail spot on when you were talking about, I think that pressure to kind of succeed. And I'm assuming building this legacy for your babies and their babies, right? And one of the things that I always kind of say when we are operating in spaces as the only and as the first is really a matter of processing. And you guys touched on that a little bit. So for me, that looks like self-reflection. So it's not just processing what's happening, but it's really learning how to stop and check in with yourself. So Ms. Tasha, I heard you say breathing, which is a good kind of way to ground yourself. But then what are we doing? Like, what are actionable steps that we're doing? And I think what's really important is to self-reflect. How am I feeling right now? What feels good in my body? What doesn't feel good? Right? What is kind of coming up as irritating? What are operating as triggers? What is kind of happening? And when you get really good about doing that, and some of the things that I say that I recommend to my clients is set a timer every hour and just check in with yourself, jot down what is your body going through. Sometimes I kind of liken it to feeling inflamed, like an exposed nerve, that you're feeling like this, but you haven't registered that you're feeling like this. So then things are happening in your environment and it's creating more tension. It's creating more agitation for you. And then you're getting home or you're working in another environment and you're snapping or you're flashing, right? And when I see people engaging in these behaviors, I know that sometimes they have no aware that all of this stimuli is happening on the outside of their body and on the inside. And if you don't get good about self-reflecting, you're carrying this and then you're expelling it, right? And so that I want to stop and kind of get any thoughts about that if you have any before I move on, because we're about to go a little bit deeper.
I do. I really do. Hello, Dr. Beal. It's so good to see you again.
I know.
And I'm so glad that we're having this conversation because I wasn't aware, how deep into the mental health field that you are, and being a co-author with you. This is an awesome opportunity. So thank you. You mentioned having these things that are on the inside, and they start to permeate and you start to snap. It is always on undeserving people.
Yes.
And I've
Yes.
recognized that about myself. And I want that to be a self-check so badly. I find myself lately saying things like, you know, I know this isn't your fault. I'm just in a bad space. And usually when I
Yeah.
say that, I let the air out of it. I let the energy
Yep.
out of it. But that you
Yeah.
made such a good point. You really did.
Yeah, and I think it's so important that if we don't stop and take responsibility for some of those outward behaviors that we find ourselves engaging in, then I think we're really doing ourselves a disservice and the people around us, the people that we love, right? So I always say that I'm on this continual healing journey. You didn't know that I was deep into this. I know we're co-authors. I do want to say this, that I actually got my mammogram on the day that I defended my dissertation. So I had a mammogram, and then I moved into my dissertation and I passed and I became a doctor. And as I posted, you know, this huge monument, I was like, but I got a mammogram. So
yes, I saw that.
I love that.
Yes. I got a mammogram. Yes. And then I conquered this beast. But it's really important that we understand who we are, and not just, you know, like I hear you say that you like vacations and you really protect that time, but checking in with yourself consistently. And as you are kind of getting to know, right? So like I've gotten very, very good. Let me back up a little bit. I was going to say this. I always say that I'm on this continual journey. And the work that I do, I call heart work, because it really is intentional work. It's really about getting to know yourself in a way so that you learn how to protect yourself, because if you don't do it, no one else is going to.
No, not at all.
Well, no.
Right. And so as you are starting to kind of get to know like what your body, right, triggers, I think is a huge thing that we don't talk enough about. In my 43 years in life, I'm still can be agitated by something and then go to my very Black therapist who tells it like it is and uncover triggers that kind of started and, you know, erupted for me in my childhood. Right. And so if we don't get in tune with those things, then these, you know, behaviors can perpetuate. As we're kind of winnowing down this information and making sense of it, I think it's really important to start to identify what your values are. So for me, I really hate it the way that I would flash on people. I always like joke. It's not a joke. It's not funny that I would flip tables, right? And I was like enraged, right? And I just carried this anger around with me. And people that I love would get the you know, the extreme of it. And that didn't make me feel good. And I remember as I started doing some of this healing work, really like trying to identify what do I want to achieve in these relationships. And so for me, it was identifying values. And one of my number one values right now is centering relationships with the people I'm in, right? What does that look like? Mutual respect, adoration, love. I have a heart of service. And so am I engaging in that value when I'm interacting? And so
I'm sorry, Danielle, can we pause for a second right there? Because I feel like sometimes when you have this heart of service, I have a heart of service, I know you do. How do you protect your mental health as a heart of service? Because sometimes when you have that type of servicing spirit, it's hard to say no, or you know, we're going to tell everybody yes, because we want to be there for people, we want to celebrate people, we want to be of service. So I'm glad that you brought that up, that you have that same type of spirit. But when you do that, what is that doing to your mental health, and then how can we kind of balance it?
Yes. So this is where, so we have processing, right? So checking in with yourself. A part of what I hope that you can learn to do is identify this feels good. So for instance, you invite me someplace. This is an example, Tasha. You invited me, right? And I really wanted to honor that commitment. I'm very big about commitment. As I checked in and as I compared it to something else that came up in my schedule, I had to say, am I going to go into this thing holding resentment because I didn't get to do this other thing? Right. And I had to kind of weigh out what was important to me in that moment, what I needed. And then I was honest and transparent with you about that. I said, I am deeply committed to this. I'm really bummed that I'm missing this opportunity, but this came up. This is what I feel I need in this moment. So I still centered and maintain the rapport that you and I have and that relationship
Yes.
while honoring what my body was telling me, right? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
Right.
Because, and I'm
in
glad you said that, because I think we feel that resentment sometimes when we are a no, or if we have to change something, we do hold that resentment in our bodies instead of just honoring. And I'm glad that you're explaining it in this way, because when you told me about that, I just wanted to honor you and be like, girl, go, like, we are good.
Yeah.
But in hearing it in this way of, I wanted to honor how I felt. How many times do we really sit and say, hold on, let me honor what I feel and what is best for me?
And
we
how
don't
powerful.
do that.
How powerful.
Gosh, thank
And
you.
you can't get to that point if you don't learn that skill of self-reflection, right? Being honest with yourself before anyone else, because I know we know that saying, put the life mask on you before others, but we're in this society that cultivates like busyness, right? And you know, in my own healing journey, through my own experience, I'm like, if I'm not okay, then I'm carrying around all this stuff and it's affecting. So processing, identifying what my values are, and then really engaging in behaviors that honor those values, I think is really important. But you've got to be clear about that first, I think is kind of the most important foundational piece to this.
I like the word identifying, because you have to identify your feelings in order to process them. If you don't know they're there,
to acknowledge them.
Exactly.
Yes.
If you don't know they're there or pretend like they're not there, then how do you make it past it or through it?
Exactly.
Because you can't really past it. You have to walk through things these days. That's something else that I've learned.
And I feel like we become so accustomed to pushing our feelings down to continue to function. Yes.
And I think another key piece, like in this example of me centering relationships, that doesn't mean that I'm centering you. That means that I get to show up in this relationship, right? And if you and I are going to be in the space that I'm honoring as a value, then that means I get to be honest with you, right? And I get to be a part of creating that safe space with you, right? But this is years and years and years of healing work that I think I've had to learn to kind of shut down some of that noise that's saying, no, you have to fit in this box. And I'm like, no, I don't. I have to, at the end of the day, be okay with me. And I always say my first like ministry is my family. And so I was realizing I'm giving and giving and giving, and then coming home and like tearing my family apart because I was miserable. Right. And so it was really important to me that I identified kind of what my values are and how I want to show up and really engaging in behaviors surrounding those values.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think it is important not only for us to honor what we feel, how we feel, but you also need to make sure you have friends around you that respect and honor that too. So that when you say, hey, I'm feeling like this, or no, I can't do that, they're not taking it personal and then dumping on you because you didn't do or say something that they feel you should have done or said. So I think, you know, for those that are watching right now, make sure you have that supportive circle that will honor how you're feeling so that you can feel safe, you can feel vulnerable. You can allow yourself the space to say, I don't want to do I love you, but I can't today.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
I don't.
And they're supposed to love and respect and honor you for saying respectfully, no.
Yes.
It's okay.
And no is a complete sentence. That's it. You can say no.
Wait a minute. Say that again for the people way in the back that cannot hear you. No, it's a complete sentence. Period.
No, it's a complete sentence.
I love that. No is a complete sentence. That's it.
Right. No, period.
No.
Period is the end of a sentence.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. I would say that I'm fortunate to be surrounded by those supportive, unconditionally supportive friends. I have to say that is. They've shown their heads through situation.
Absolutely. And I think as you are starting to kind of narrow down this process, what you're doing is ultimately creating a safe space for yourself, right? I think a lot of times we look at other people to create that space for us, but it's our responsibility. Once we can do that, then we can establish boundaries with other people. We can establish what safe spaces look like, right? I have this kind of way. I was a sign language interpreter for 15 years, so I visualize kind of my thoughts and feelings before I have words for them. And so I imagine every interaction, every relationship that I have in my life like a Venn diagram. So there's your circle, there's my circle, and then there's our circle, right? And based on how I feel comfortable and how much I can disclose and how we can establish the safe space together determines the size of that circle that we share. Right. So based on your behavior, that might decrease, right? But based on like the mutual kind of respect that we have with each other, it might increase, right? And so that's how I kind of tend to, I don't have to get upset, right? We don't have to agree on everything. I just kind of analyze that circle that we share together. And that's how I navigate safe spaces in my environment. I think it's really important. So when we get to the next few steps in what I'm about to share, that I'm not stressed and I'm not causing myself extra burden and trying to take on your stuff or the responsibility of what, right. And so the next kind of part of this is no matter how heavy it is, and I have lived in very deep, dark places. I heard you kind of share your beautiful story about your mom, and I was very emotional because this grief can be immediate and it can be long lasting, right? Once we experience it, sometimes it grabs a hold of us and it's hard to kind of breathe in that. And one of the things that I found in navigating my own grief is really that life is going to be disappointing, that we live in a horrible kind of space and time right now. And it can get heavy, but I have to choose every single day to not get burdened down by the heaviness and the ugliness of where we are. And I have to intentionally make room for joy. So in every single day, as I'm processing,
let's repeat that. I have to intentionally make room for joy. Okay, go ahead. Keep going.
Intentionally, as I am navigating the ugliness of the world, and I'm carrying as a clinical psychologist the burdens of other people, and I'm being that container for them. I'm highly sensitive. I'm deeply empathic. So I absorb all the energy around me. I have to intentionally be checking in with myself, determine what I can handle, what I can't handle. Am I acting in honor of my values? And where am I finding joy? The little black boy laughing across the street, right? The little baby that's like being thrown in the air and is like giggling, right? The beautiful flowers that that my daughter gave me, right? Like I am looking for these kind of opportunities to share the space with the grief that I'm experiencing on a continual basis. I think
that's really beautiful. And I think saying no gives you more opportunity to
make
have
room.
joy in those spaces,
Guilt-free.
And I was just gonna say, as much as we hate saying no, doesn't it feel great when you do? Like sometimes you're like, I can say no and not have the guilt. I can say no and still have a good relationship, a good friendship, business, partnership, whatever the case is, and still say no.
Yes. And and I would challenge you to reframe, because it feels like I hear you saying, when I say no, I'm missing out on an opportunity. Right. And what I challenge you to kind of reframe that thought to be is, well, if you're saying no to this because you've checked in with yourself and it doesn't serve you, what are you making room to say yes to?
Of course. Absolutely.
Right. And really like honoring that. So then that guilt that you were talking about now becomes an intentional act, an intentional behavior that you're engaging in, right? That you've made a choice to engage in this behavior, again, in service of your values.
Right. And you're honoring yourself in doing so. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Not at all.
Yeah. I love that. I love that.
Yes. And then finally, I think as we are intentionally creating space for joy on a daily basis, not just every 3 months, Miss Shirrell, I'm gonna keep saying this, intentionally making room for joy every day so that we're not feeling so burdened and we're not white knuckling it through life, right? Missing opportunities to really be present. I think is as you're making those adjustments, determining being in the present moment, right? How am I feeling now? What do I want to do now? And determining what you can handle. So I create my schedule a month in advance. And for the most part, because I know myself so well and I know my capacity, I know what I can handle. But some days I wake up and I'm like, it's too much for me today.
Yeah.
Right. And so I make those adjustments and I don't feel bad because I'm so in tuned with what's happening with me.
Yeah.
And I know that if I take a day, right, that I'm using it to my advantage. And then the next time I show up, I'm going to do all the things and be all the things, right? But you've got to be able to kind of make those adjustments so that you can understand what your capacity is in any given moment on any given day.
I so appreciate that.
And I think it's so hard for us, especially as women, as moms, as business owners, to remember to check in with yourself, right? Because it's not something that we are taught to do, right? We're taught to check in on everybody else.
Yeah.
You know, and so it is important to check in. And I love the fact that you said, yes, I do my schedule a month in advance. But if I wake up on Tuesday and it ain't working on Tuesday,
this is what you're gonna get, right?
You know, and for me, what I get is like my kids will come and take my laptop and hide it until I rest, until I reset and until I recharge, because they know they see me going and going and going. And again, they're like, I'm queen of telling somebody check in with yourself. I tell you that, but I don't always do it. Like, I hope y'all didn't hear me. So I'm glad you are giving me that reminder and teaching us to give ourselves permission to say, not today. Right.
Yes.
Exactly. Not today. We're quick to say, like, if something is going on, we're quick to look at somebody and be like, not today, Jesus. You know, because you don't want that person to see the other side of you. But I need you to say that for yourself. Not today. I just need to go and rest.
Yeah. And I'm hearing practice what you preach. Practice what you preach. Because I can tell someone else, don't worry about this. Take some time for yourself. You need to rest. You need to go to the doctor. Do I do that?
Not all the time.
Not all the time.
Yeah. And I think as we're kind of, you know, looking at this idea of physically functioning, but like being mentally drained, I think a lot of that is self-imposed, right? And I think it's really important to kind of consider, like, am I white knuckling it, right? And that term kind of, when I now I use it all the time, because for so long, and I heard you say this, and it, like, I always say that I always knew about my trauma. I was always aware of you know, the big things that happened in my life. But one day I was like, it was like my whole life I was running away from this Mucinex monster. That's what my trauma looks like, that nasty Mucinex monster. And I'm going and I'm running, right? And I'm like, school and like no drugs and like focus and because I'm running away from this trauma. And then one day a trigger happened. I looked back, I saw this big, nasty monster. And when I turned back around, I hit a brick wall. And what I had realized that I was doing is I had been white knuckling it through life, just trying to escape the horror that my past was. And it wasn't until I confronted it and I started actually doing the work, the heart work, that I actually started to heal. And now on any given day, I function at a level that I know I'm capable of. That doesn't mean that I'm not exhausted on days, or that some days I'm not working, you know, 13, 14, 15-hour days. But I have learned to honor myself first, because without, like, I don't want to white knuckle it. I don't want to show up, you know, half-witted, right, and exhausted. I want to show up and be fully present and enjoy this beautiful life that I get to experience. And so when I centered my values, it was really, that was a breaking point in me being able to make really intentional choices on any given day.
In the last 3 months, 3.5 months, my white knuckles are red, just
I
bloody,
know. Yeah.
literally bloodied. And what I'm finding is that if you, in listening to you, I'm thinking to myself, that's the reason that you find, what I want to say, self-destructive
Yes.
ways of handling things instead of honoring what you're feeling in the moment.
Yes.
And then you go somewhere else.
Yes.
The first month, maybe, or more, I was drinking every single.
Yes.
And not to the point of drunk and pass out, but that was my
Mhm.
pacifier. That was my, okay, you got to open that bottle of champagne because this is how you feel and this is how you're going to get through the day.
Yes.
And I started to recognize that I was using a self-destructive Band-Aid to fix how I was feeling.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so that's why when you asked me about the show, the first thing that came to my mind was, you got to check that mental health girl.
Yes.
You have got to. So I have walked away from that Band-Aid since then because I recognized it.
Yeah.
I recognized it as something that I was doing that was hurting myself.
And it
Yeah,
is
and I
acknowledge your feelings, acknowledge where you are, because what I find is if you don't acknowledge your feelings,
Yes.
somebody will tell you how you feel, and then
Yep.
you adopt that as your truth.
Yes.
Or you reject it so much that you feel resentment against that person because they've actually
Yep.
told you what
Yep.
you needed to hear, and you're like, that ain't
Yes.
you know. So
And I think this is why I highlight finding joy, because you've got to kind of make room for other things. Otherwise, you will get swallowed and buried in kind of the devastation, right? And so like today was a very busy day and I knew I could show up, and there were moments where I saw the victims, right, over, from the past 2 months. And knowing that at some point I need to stop and grieve because I'm carrying this, right? I know I'm carrying that. I'm aware that I'm carrying it. Making that time to process and grieve and go through that process, while also knowing that simultaneously I can feel joy too, right? And so I think it's really important. That's why I highlight that, because otherwise we can be completely consumed.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So can I ask, how do you prepare for those moments when you see those triggers or you feel those triggers? You know they're right there, like you can see them coming, and somehow you've either not gotten completely out of the way, or you've watched it coming and you stand there and go, okay, it's like having a hot flash. You know it's going to happen. You let it happen.
Yeah. So a couple months ago, I was in my optometrist office and I was very stressed about having to get bifocals and was not happy about it. And I felt very dismissed by one of the technicians there, and had been doing some deep, deep therapeutic work recently with my therapist, and knew that when I feel dismissed, I enrage and have this very visceral reaction. I went through a whole cycle of panic. I called my husband and it wasn't until he said, Danielle, like, this is what's happening. Right. And he helped me recognize, because I was inflamed. I was this exposed
All
nerve.
the way up.
And I literally stopped. And I went back in, and with everything I could muster, because I did not want to damage that relationship, went in there and said, I'm not okay. I need to leave. I will get back to you. Right. I was having a full on panic attack.
Wow.
But I have like just tacting is where you just label, this is what's happening to me in this moment. This is the best I can do. I have to leave this situation.
Okay.
Right. And literally, then I had to go, before I could drive, I had to de-escalate. I had to go through my grounding exercises. And then I had to call my husband to, right. But I did the work first. Let me get to a place where I am calming the inflammation, if you will. But it's not easy. And if you don't identify those triggers, you walk into them, then you have this reaction.
So
I
just
don't know
walk
if that
away from it. Just walk
If
away.
that's
If
what
feel
you
like
need
that's
to
what you
do.
need, just remove yourself.
Yes. And for me, I went back and repaired, right? So when I was okay, I didn't go into my history of trauma, but I said, I didn't like the way I was treated. This is how I was made to feel.
Yeah.
I was wrong for engaging in this behavior. Moving forward, if I'm going to frequent this place, this is what I expect of you. Can you handle that? They said
Got it.
yes. We're going to try it again.
Done.
Exactly.
Done.
And that's how we get to do that. So we are going to take a quick break. This has been such just a really good conversation. And, it's as fast as it comes and goes. So we're coming to the end. We're going to take a quick break. And then I want you guys to share with how people can find you guys. So let's take a quick break.
Pyro Media Network is a proactive network focused on providing innovative space for content creators and entrepreneurs. PMN is dedicated to giving its viewers a diverse entertainment experience while helping content creators elevate their production, engagement, and overall branding. To date, PMN has reached over 1 million viewers and listeners internationally, produced over 72 successful shows with high ratings and fanfare, and has housed over 135 content creators, brands, and businesses through entertainment and consulting services exclusive to Pyro Media. Pyro Media Network is a space that makes you feel at home. So if you or someone you know wants to make an impact, then contact PMN by visiting www.pyromedianetwork.com, and we will take your production to the next level.
Okay, so this conversation was so good and so juicy and so many phenomenal nuggets dropped that we are actually over time. So my apologies. What I will do is, number one, Danyelle, of course, we have to have you back on the show to really share your story. But I am going to add into the comments how people can get in contact with you. I will also post it on my page because I want people to be able to follow you guys and learn the things that you do. So thank you for being with us today. We will see you back next week. Thank you to my Shenomenal co-stars. You guys have a wonderful week.